Hello everyone, welcome to Beyond Words podcast series. I'm Donna Balasurya and today's topic is going to be impactful communication. Now this is a topic that I'm deeply passionate about and have worked on for years. And along with me, we have another person who is equally passionate about this topic. And he is a chief financial officer, a chartered accountant, and I personally know how good of an accountant he is because he keeps a tab on all my expenses. Especially, he's so good at scrutinizing my shopping expenses.
For sure.
So we have Yogendra Prasad Satyaseelan with us, aka Yoga. Hi, how are you doing today?
Hi. And this is Donna Balasurya. She is a lawyer, the founder of Law and Order Academia, a passionate lecturer, and a corporate trainer. I know how good of a lawyer she is because for many years now, I have never, ever even thought of winning an argument against her. Lost every single one of them.
Absolutely. I bet on it, Yoga. So, to get into the topic at hand today, what do you think of the impact that communication can create?
A very interesting, a timely topic, isn't it? A lot of people are speaking about the importance of communication skills. I think what you want to say, whether you say it, how you say it, and how the other person receives it can make a huge impact for you and for the people around you. It could actually go on to define who you become in the future. So if you master this art, it could take you far, far away in life.
Yeah.
I would categorize communication skills into three major categories. One, it would be internal communication. Second, I would say interpersonal communication. Third is public speaking.
Yeah.
What would you think about internal communication?
Absolutely, Yoga. First of all, I agree to the three categories, and I think the most underrated way of communication is the internal communication because that's where everything starts.
Yes.
If you want to progress in life and if you want to take a certain path in life, the first thing that you must look at is the internal communication.
Yes.
So a famous author, a motivational guru called Robin Sharma has said it over and over again because we always tend to look at outwards when it comes to success, not inwards. But truly, if you want to progress, what you should be looking at is how do you communicate with yourself?
Yes.
Do you have negative self-talk? If so, this is the moment that you've got to change it to positive self-talk. Because we know if your self-talk is negative, constantly if you're putting yourself down, if you're saying, no, I'm not good enough, or you cannot do this, why is everything happening to me? And you're questioning God, you're questioning universe, or if you're somebody who is always blaming, complaining, excuse making, so these are all negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And this is how you communicate with yourself. That's what we call as internal communication. So it's time, if you want to progress in your life, the first most important thing is to master this internal communication.
I completely agree with you. There are enough and more people who are so talented, who are also successful. But if you ask them, don't know whether it's because of them being so humble, but they always will come up with something to say that they are not good enough.
Yeah.
The overall idea of it is.
Yeah.
So I think that is the first communication barrier that we will have to bridge and then go past, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we know how important internal communication is. It is important for us to say how good we are, how we are capable, we are good enough, great. But what are some suggestions? Because the negative thoughts are always there. It's always existing, ever existing.
Yeah.
So how do we, what is some tip to improve it? Improve our positive outlook of our own selves.
Yeah. So one thing I would suggest is that before we get there are three things that are within our control, Yoga. That is the feelings or the thoughts that we have, the words we speak, and our behavior.
Brilliant.
So how do we change this? If you're constantly somebody who is negative and who is having negative experiences in life, first thing I would suggest is to use positive affirmations. So what are these affirmations? Now, this is something that is said over and over again, yet nobody really understands what positive affirmations are. So positive affirmations are positive statements about your reality. For example, I can say, I'm so grateful and happy that I got this job at ABC company, or I'm so grateful and happy that I have a healthy life. So whatever the reality that you want to create, you write the sentences in present tense and you repeat it, so that whatever
also, have you seen there are people who always say, I'm so afraid of getting a disease, I'm so afraid of losing my money, I'm so afraid of losing somebody that is dear to me, and then unfortunately they attract that by saying the word over and over again, because they say words attract the reality. They through repeating the words, they have attracted that reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of the most powerful laws in the universe. We know whatever we think, whatever we fear for the most, it's most certain to happen. So through positive affirmations, we can always change our perspective on things. We can change the way we think. If we are, for instance, if we are constantly facing negative experiences, then if we can write positive affirmations, for example, let's say you have failed your exam, but you can always say, I'm grateful and happy that I passed my final year exams with 70s or with a distinction.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So this is basically how
What
you
if
can...
someone says, isn't it childish? Isn't it childish to say that you repeat something and something would happen out of it?
Yeah.
Just by repeating it, would you achieve it? What would you say to that?
The thing is, there are so many experiments researchers done about positive affirmations that are so true to be, I mean, sometimes it's beyond our imagination, the power it has, because it can really change. So I'll give you why I say this, okay? There is a research that is proven that whatever we think and whatever the reality around us, there is no difference on how the mind perceives it.
Right.
So if I to say it in different words, the mind does not see a difference between what we try to convince through positive affirmations, through visualizing, and the reality.
Right.
Right? So by using positive affirmations, by using these visualizing, these techniques, it can always uplift your spirit, it can always empower you, and it can always help you eradicate these negative thoughts and have a positive outlook. So thereby you can improve on the internal communication that you have.
That's brilliant. So the good news of the mind not knowing what the reality is the fact that irrespective of what your present circumstance is, you can speak and make it the truth, make it the reality, isn't it? You can create your future by affirming to yourself that is your present reality and the future reality going to be.
Absolutely. So Yoga, now one tip that I gave was to use positive affirmations. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Yes. Personally, I have used affirmations too to improve my personal internal communication, and that has helped me a lot. And one more thing that we will have to do is, because negative thoughts are ever existing. There is no way to stop negative thoughts to be there. When we are thinking about the country, when we are thinking about home, when we are thinking about work, there is some negative thought here or there or everywhere. So one of the most important things to do is, while we internally affirm positive things are going to come and positive things are happening, if we don't reduce the power of the negative thoughts, then we fail, because the negative powers are always there. So what I do whenever a negative thought comes, without me knowing, when that thought comes and almost fades, I always used to say, why is it going to happen? It won't happen. It's not going to be my reality. That will not happen. By that, I don't empower that negative thought. So I don't give power to it. So it doesn't become reality. Even though I am empowering my positive thoughts, because the negative thoughts are there, we have to be conscious to make sure that the negative thoughts don't have the power to work while we are not being conscious about it. So my suggestion would be, yes, great, positively affirm, and also be very careful and cautious about the negative thoughts. And whenever a negative thought comes, make sure that you break that and don't give power to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now that we touched on internal communication,
Yes.
let's move on to interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication, what we mean is the communication between two individuals, isn't it?
Yes.
So when it comes to interpersonal communication, I think this is again one of the things that is mostly overlooked,
Yeah.
and something that is significant in our day-to-day life. What can you say about improving interpersonal communication?
What you said is absolutely right. In the sense, now we are slowly waking up to how important public speaking skills are, how we
Yes.
speak to a group of people.
Yeah.
That we are slowly waking up.
Yeah.
Now, for example, when we went to school, we were schooling, we never learnt about public speaking at school.
Yes.
But now children are learning about it. Or during the school breaks, there are people who are doing it. There are organizations that are conducting programs, which is great, which is brilliant. This is the need of the hour. But should we not also focus on how we speak to each other? Because
Absolutely.
that is very important.
Yeah.
Whether it's relationships, whether it's your work colleagues, whether it's somebody that you don't know, a complete stranger, how do you communicate with them?
Yeah.
Do you communicate to empower, or do you not communicate at all? With the advent of, with all the growth and progress in the technology, everybody thought we are going to become much more closer. But what has happened is we have become much more far apart, isn't it? What is
Yeah.
one of your biggest complaints at home?
Yeah.
Keep your phone down and speak to me.
Yes.
And I have said the same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think this is the reality of many of us, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I think communication there is crucial. That is how we build bridges. That is how we build relationships. That is how we build trust. That is how we build trust within each other, so that I feel like, okay, I can completely trust you. I can place my trust and I can go a journey with you. Same with you, right?
Yeah.
So interpersonal communication skills are very important. Now, for example, there could be people who are completely down.
Yeah.
Can you remember a moment like that for you?
Yeah.
I can definitely remember a moment like that for me too. In those times, at those times, do you have specific people that you want to talk to? It
Yeah.
could be a friend, it could be family, it could be somebody that you know. You want to speak to them because you know they will say the right things to bring you out from that negativity, from
Yes.
that feeling.
Yes.
I have that too. And there are times when we are so happy. The first call we take is usually to the same person that we have been calling for a while.
Yeah.
So why is that? Because they know how to make us balanced, how to while celebrating with us, to make us feel okay. So that is important too, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say is interpersonal communication skills are crucial. So there are people who have the power to say the right things, say the right words, to uplift others. They will speak to somebody who is absolutely demotivated and dejected, and they can make the other person motivated. Somebody who has suicidal thoughts, there are people who can talk to them and make them feel better.
Absolutely.
There are people who can talk to somebody who has been angry for years, who don't want to even look at your face, but then if they speak to them, they feel okay. There are people that we repeatedly go to, whether we like them or not, because they have the power to have an interpersonal conversation and make us feel better, make us feel uplifted and happy that we had that conversation.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, in any conversation, the best way to improve a person's ability to have good interpersonal conversations is to always start from the place of, irrespective of what the situation is, I am here to uplift you, uplift your self-confidence, and that's that.
Yeah.
Whether you do a great job, whether you do a fantastic job or not a great job at all, but my responsibility is to speak to you in such a kind, uplifting manner that you feel your self-confidence is uplifted. You feel better because you had a conversation. We are facing a generation that doesn't want to look away from their phones.
Yeah.
They want to be disconnected. How do we bring them back? The simplest way is when we have good, worthwhile, loving, empathetic conversations.
Yeah.
That So in future, one of the most important skills, communication skills, are going to be interpersonal communication skills. How do we speak to somebody, whether we come from a place of understanding, whether we are there to push ourselves up to make ourselves bigger, or whether we truly care for somebody else, whether we are there to uplift them and make them feel better. So I guess this skill, this also includes two other most important skills. One is negotiation skills. How do we negotiate with each other? Second is, when there is a problem, how do we resolve these problems? Now the problems don't resolve, they get bottled up, and one day it bursts. So I think we have seen the consequences of it in the past.
By the time the relationship is also broken.
Yeah, the relationship is broken. There could be other things that are done, right? There could be people trying to bring a knife to a conversation. Anything could happen. So how do we not let that happen? By having good, reasonable, empathetic conversations, interpersonal conversations. So that is why improving that skill is mandatory and is important.
Yeah. And to add to that, Yoga, what I've personally seen is now, apart from empowering people and that side of interpersonal communication, what about the strangers? Now, day before yesterday, I went to Keels and there was a long queue.
Right.
And there was one lady with maybe one or two items who wanted to immediately pay and go. So she was queue jumping. So we can understand how everyone's reacting.
Yes.
Everyone's defensive. Whoa, we've been waiting. Yeah, angry. Yeah. And we've been waiting in this queue for a while. So long. And there is one person who is trying to queue jump.
Yep.
So in a situation like that, what if this lady could just take a moment to explain, I just have only two items. So can you please allow me to go? Yeah, simple.
It feels impossible at times, no, to have that, to do that.
Exactly, right? So, but it's such a simple communication, and everyone would understand. Than just taking your own lead and doing something like that, where everyone will get upset. So even things like that, I think we lack common sense and also simple communications. We need to know how to incorporate into our life. And also what I've seen is in terms of communication, interpersonal communication. Now, since you said that we can experience these in terms of between colleagues, in terms of relationships. There is one incident I can remember when I took part in this training program. The trainer said there was one job that one of his students left because when he was asked what was the problem with the job, he's like, no, the work is good, the pay is good. But the problem was the boss is calling them as, you do this, you do that. So this was so offensive to him.
Right.
You can understand, right? Because he's like, I'm not an animal, I'm not a dog, I'm not a cat to speak to me using like snaps.
Right.
So a simple thing like that, which is not really a simple thing, it's about how you really communicate. So even gestures like that could be offensive. So this is why we need to have emotional intelligence. That's also one thing, and also learn to communicate respectfully, and that's part of impactful communication that we're touching on
today. So I think one of the most fundamental needs that in any interpersonal communication, whether at work, whether in relationships, whether in family, whether in our extended family, whether it's in our neighbors, wherever, is the need for the other person to feel valued. I think one of the greatest problems, if you really dig deep into it, one of the biggest issues is whether I feel valued, whether my opinion is valued. There are people who don't want to change their opinion just because if they only put their foot down, others will listen. Right? So what if we open the forum for people to listen, isn't it? I think you told me the other day about an example of an entrepreneur. Would you like to share that?
For sure. So this entrepreneur, one of the biggest manufacturers of boats and ships in Sri Lanka, so he used to ask all the employees, including the lowest possible levels, to write ideas to improve the organization. And he does that by the year end, and he rewards the best idea too. So look at that. So even a person who might, in our eyes, not playing a significant role, can still be appreciated and might feel recognized when their ideas are being heard.
That's
So that's impactful communication. That's great interpersonal communication. So even a person who is of a lower level in the organization will still have access to the highest possible level.
That's true. So I have felt in my, whether it's at work or in the social organizations that I work for, I have found that whenever we give the opportunity for other people to be heard, there are brilliant ideas that come up.
Yeah.
The organizations, the clubs, the company, the teams always work very well because everybody feels they are valued.
Yeah.
I feel that I belong here. I have not become a stranger within my own organization.
Yeah.
The moment that feeling is broken, everybody starts working together. Everybody tries to make the team better. Everybody, most importantly, when you give the opportunity for everybody to be heard, what they do in turn is to make sure in future meetings, future gatherings, what they do is, in case somebody is feeling a little silent, feeling not well, they make sure that we hear them too. So it's a circular effect. So it's brilliant. So one of the fundamental things to do is to respect, to give opportunity for everyone to be heard.
Absolutely. And Yoga, I also want to ask you now, you are somebody who has had tremendous experience in the corporate world, who has dealt with so many different types of people, different caliber of people, and you must have encountered numerous times conflicts of opinion.
Yes.
Right? There can be people who are giving an opinion that is contrary to yours. Maybe your subordinates could be having opinions that are clashing. So in such situation, what are the tips you would give? How do we communicate effectively without hurting the other person? Because whenever we put down someone else's idea, then they might get hurt.
Yeah.
And it could be offensive.
Yeah.
And especially if you do not know how to communicate it in the right way. So what are the tips and tricks that you would give in such a situation? How do you handle it?
So the first thing is always make sure that everybody is respected and everybody feels valued. Their opinion matters. And there are, at times, opinions are put down just because, not because that opinion is bad, but because it is the person who's saying it. I don't like the person, so I will not implement their idea.
Yeah.
So the moment you remove that, and every opinion is valued, every person is valued, you create an environment that's already positive. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to make sure nobody is big and nobody is small.
Yeah.
If you are the leader, if you are the person who is going to say, there is no leaders or no followers here, we all are equal, let's sit together on a table, let's discuss everything. In life, there is nothing that cannot be discussed and solved, isn't it? So first thing is there should be willingness to open up the forum for everybody, listen to everybody, make everybody feel valued. Right. Second is the trust and belief in the ability of and the power of conversations can have in the decision making. You have a disagreement, no problem. Right. There is no problem whatsoever. But let us join hands together, speak about it, and solve it together. So that is number two. So thirdly, whenever a leader is brought a complaint of why there is a disagreement or why there is a conflict, I think it's our responsibility to ask and dig deeper to go to the micro level and see what the real problem is. Usually people might say this is the problem, but that might not be the problem. Yeah. They might say I don't like the color of the light, but then that's not the reason. Maybe the AC is too much. Maybe the seating arrangement is bad. Maybe they have some ill feeling and that is why they say what they say. So it is the leader's responsibility in interpersonal communication and managing interpersonal communication in between others within the team to see what the real problems are and solve those real problems. If not, what will happen is you will solve the problem thinking that is the problem that you're solving, but unfortunately the problem to be solved is something else. Yeah. So as the leader, it's our responsibility to identify what the problem we are trying to solve and why it should be solved, and that is the problem that we solve, rather than solving problems that are not existing. Right. So to take time and solve the right problem is fundamental in interpersonal communication skills too.
Right.
Should we, in interpersonal, should we touch upon relationships a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially that we are speaking about this, maybe we'll touch on it a little
Yes,
bit.
yes.
So my take on relationships and interpersonal communication particularly is that, especially if it's husband and wife, there's a quote that I particularly uphail in my life, that is, some people do the mistake of thinking that communication has already happened without even doing it.
Yeah.
So not communicating is fatal, I believe, for any relationship.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's number one, because we tend to bottle up things, as you said before.
Yeah, I think
and
that is because of the influence of these movies, I'm sure, right? Like
Right.
we have been told, or books also, like we have been told a perfect relationship is where we don't have arguments, we don't have disagreements,
Yes.
we all agree on the same thing. It's
Yeah.
not that we have figured out everything, but then we argue our hearts out.
Yes.
But we are getting there to a place where it's okay to communicate about
Correct.
it. We are free to communicate about
Yes.
things. So yes, as you say,
Yeah.
communication skills are fundamental. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And then, as you said, I mean, not maybe toxic arguments where you just throw words randomly, whatever the word that comes to your head.
No.
But good conversations, productive conversations that would really help to bring the relationship forward. Communicate your problems or the issues that you have decently as human beings.
That's true.
And one of the fundamental mistakes, I believe, that in most of the relationship that happens, not just husband and wife, maybe with your parents, maybe with your children, is that we tend to cross boundaries. And
Yeah.
this is something that we tend to think that we are
Why
so
do you think that
comfortable.
is?
I personally think that we are so comfortable with each
Yeah.
other that we tend to use the most harshest possible words, and as a result, we hurt our feelings, and the relationship will not go back to where it is.
Yeah.
Right now in Sinhala also we use this term where if you have said it, that word you cannot pull even if we have 1,000 elephants because it's already said.
Yeah.
And that's why our ancestors, I have heard this story where our ancestors used to have a button in their mouth so that they will think twice before they speak. So
Right.
even if it's the closest relationship, I think we have to be careful
Yeah.
in how we communicate things.
One of the reasons is because we are at war with the world,
Yes.
and then when we come home, we feel comfortable. So at the comfortable place, unfortunately, what happens is we bring the war home, and
Right.
we present the results of the war to our loved ones.
Right.
There are times when whether at school, while doing exams, whether at work, we bring home those problems, and whenever the mother or the wife or the kid, whoever wants to talk to you, you give the gift of that pressure. Your pressure release is the family. So it's very unfortunate that happens, even though it's almost impossible to do it, because our loved ones, we believe, should understand and will understand.
Correct.
But then we also have to know, I think they also have feelings and that could be hurt. So it's understanding of both parties that could help us make it better.
And also respect, right?
Yeah.
So it comes with respect. And how many times have we apologized to each other saying that this is not how I wanted to say it.
Yeah.
It's not the right word that came out at that time.
Yeah.
So at least an attempt like that to maybe say sorry later should definitely be there when you're having good, impactful communication within a relationship. And also, Yoga, to add to that, there's this beautiful line that Jay Shetty in his podcast with his wife shared, that in relationships, most of the time, when we are having an argument, we tend to throw things at each other. We are fighting with each other, counter-attacking. And that's because we lack the understanding that we are one team.
Yeah.
And we're doing things for ourselves, for the betterment of us as a family. So if you can change that perspective, whenever you're having an argument, if you can come from the place as to why we're having this argument, that it is for the best interest of both of us, then the whole outlook
It's
of
not
that...
one against, we are not against each other, but us against
the
what
world,
is,
or us against
what
the
is to
problem that
happen.
you have. Yeah. So if you can change the perspective in that way, the argument or the conversation rather will take or go into a different perspective.
That's brilliant. Let's now talk about the third bigger element that we talked about, that is public speaking.
Yes.
You are somebody who has done corporate trainings, you regularly do lectures and stuff like that. So what would you say the importance of public speaking is?
I think it's really, really important and significant in a person's life, because I believe whatever the path that you want to pursue, it can really help you excel in it, and especially become a leader in whatever the path that you're pursuing if you are a good communicator. Because I can't remember the exact quote, but I've read this quote where they say a great communicator will automatically be seen as a great leader.
Right.
Because you have the ability to stand up, voice your opinions and say, this is what I think, this is what I believe should change in this organization, or this is what I believe that should be changed in the system. So you are seen as a thought leader. You are seen as that person who is with a vision automatically when you can communicate impactfully. So that's the type of importance that communication, public speaking specifically holds, because you're able to communicate your ideas, convey your ideas to a larger gathering.
That's true, right? Now, for example, we have about 8,000 chartered accountants, but there are some chartered accountants who have gone on to become presidents of the institute, or CEOs and CFOs and beyond. They have gone on to do great things. But one common element that they all have is they are great communicators. I'm sure for lawyers, how many thousands of lawyers do you have? But then look at the leaders of the profession. They are great communicators, isn't it? So if you want to stay apart from the competition, how do you define yourself? How do you redefine yourself? How do you make yourself better than others? How do you cater to the most important need of the world? That is, none of us have time, but if you are the person who has great ideas and can communicate with the least amount of words, least amount of time, you have made your mark. That is why public speaking skills are important. Whether it's revolutions, whether it's great corporations that have changed course, whether it's teams that have gone on to do great things, all have done because there was a leader who had the courage to stand up and say, this is what our direction is, this is how we are going to do it, and irrespective of what the challenges are, we are going to go and get it. Look at in 1996 World Cup for Sri Lanka. As a small country, we went on to win the world. I'm sure there were leaders within the team, we all know who they are. They went on to inspire the team. They made sure they achieved the goal irrespective of, instead of standing or stopping in the middle. So that is what a leader could do. They could inspire, they could motivate, they could take you from what you thought your dreams and achievements are to a whole new level. So that is why public speaking could change you and change the world around you, isn't it? So the good news is the world is waking up to how important communication skills are. Corporates are training their staff in it, schools are training their students in it, parents know how important it is, organizations globally have done this, so which is great. So world is waking up to it. So I think if we are to go back to what we spoke of, great that if you are a good public speaker, fantastic, continue in that direction. We all should. And then we also should focus on interpersonal and internal conversations also, because they are crucial too. Knowing that they are important, why do you think some people do not want to pursue public speaking and communication skills?
And I think yoga, it is known through research that stage fright is one of the most greatest fears that people do have. The first being the fear of death, second being stage fright. So you can imagine why from that itself, why people don't really try and test public speaking is because of this fear. And mostly I believe when you get into the stage, fear of what others would think. Will you get approved by others? Will your ideas be approved? And is it an interesting speech? What if you create a mess out of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So these are constant battles that we do have in our mind, that we constantly question ourselves.
Whether we are good enough.
Whether we are good enough.
Whether if we deliver a speech and whether that will reach the mark. What
Yeah.
if we fail? What if we
Yeah.
forget a line? What if people will laugh at us? No?
Yes.
What if we make a pronunciation mistake? What if
Yeah.
our ideas don't
Sometimes
match?
the silliest, most things that we tend to put in our heads
Yeah.
and continuously repeat it, and as a result that becomes that great paranoia that
Yeah.
we do not want to test out public speaking at all because you're so afraid. And so something that is interesting that I've read in my 20s when I was studying about success principles and personal growth is that in our 20s and 30s we are so concerned about what others really think. We're
Right.
like, oh my goodness, what if my relatives don't approve of this? And not just public speaking, your life decisions in general, the
Yeah.
risks that you take. What if my relatives don't approve? What if my mother
Society.
says no?
Yeah.
What if the society thinks that I'm a failure?
Yeah.
And then in your 40s, you don't really care. Now you're mature.
Don't
you
care
don't
about
care
it at
what
all.
others think, what the world says. We
Yeah.
are just completely so liberal.
Yes.
And you don't care at all.
Yeah.
But in your 60s, you realize that others have not been thinking about you at all. Because,
Nobody cares.
Yeah, they have their own problems, and why
Yeah.
would they have to think about you?
Yeah.
So this is an understanding that you will have through life. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
you're 60 by that time when you
You have lost
understand
your
the
whole.
truth.
Yeah.
You wasted your a lot of time at hand, isn't it?
Thinking about somebody else or thinking about others.
Yeah. So in
Very
such
true.
a time, what could you do?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have heard this called SW.
Yeah.
Some will, some won't, so what?
Brilliant.
Some will, some won't, so what?
Brilliant. This brings memories of Ajay Sebastian, who's a friend of mine from Saudi Arabia, who delivered a speech on this. Some will, some won't, so what?
Yeah.
Some will care, some won't care, so what?
Yeah,
Why do you care
absolutely.
about what is the opinion of the other person, isn't
Yeah.
it? Brilliant. Fantastic.
So you don't have to particularly let that fear put you down at all.
Yeah.
What others think, whether you will mess up or what not, just keep aside that fear and just do it
Do
anyways.
it. Brilliant. Fantastic. Second is, I think one of the fears that we have is what if there is a pronunciation mistake?
Yeah.
What if somebody will laugh at me? What if I make a mistake and I unnecessarily, the spotlight is on me?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem there is that some of us tend to take these language skills so seriously. Particularly, I think in a country like ours, where English is the third language, most of us are not really fluent in English. So you don't have to really create a barrier in order to pursue public speaking in English. You just start anyways, because I've seen enough and more people who first started with broken English
Yeah.
and yet became great leaders
Yeah.
who are great communicators because
That's
they
true.
constantly worked on themselves. They listen to podcasts, they listen to TED Talks. Whenever they watch movies, they watch English movies.
Yeah.
And they made it a point to always have a conversation with their friends in English.
Yeah.
Because now this is something that a mistake that we all do, that is, we tend to go to an English class, we write down sentences and we think our English would improve, but which is not the case, Yoga. because,
Unfortunately.
yeah, you've got to practice, you've got to have that conversation with your friend, even if it's the most difficult thing, even if it's the most embarrassing thing.
Yeah.
So I think the first factor that would really stop us from going for public speaking is the fear, and second factor is most certainly the language skills.
Yeah, but I will be very honest with you, and I'll say that I go to a restaurant and I order chopsy, and you are like, it's not chopsy, right?
Yeah.
Or there was a speech that I delivered. I refuse, and I came back and said, somebody that is dear to us came back to me and said, refuse is garbage. Refuse is what you wanted to say.
Yes.
Up until that point, I didn't know. This was just 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I didn't know there is a difference in between refuse and refuse. How is that, right?
And then what about the word success?
Yeah.
We most of us we tend to say it as success.
Yeah.
And our friend used to
Yeah.
say that it is success does not suck. So it's not success, it's success.
That's true.
So these little very subtle changes there are, but then there are times in which we all do these mistakes.
It's
but it doesn't
okay to
have
make mistakes, isn't it? Like it's all
Yeah.
right to make mistakes. We are human, and
Yes.
this is not Tamil for me or Sinhala for me, or this is the third language that I studied. What if
Yes.
I make a mistake? That's
Yeah.
perfectly all right.
Yes.
And the moment I don't judge anybody, also knowing that they are also speaking their third or fourth language, that's perfectly all right. Anybody who tries is worthy enough to be respected for them to make mistakes and learn. So anybody who is making a mistake, do not worry. We all still make mistakes. People who are great corporate trainers, leaders, they still make mistakes. It's perfectly all right. We should not put ourselves down or stop ourselves in the middle to not try because we make a mistake or two.
Yeah, and after all, you never know how good of a communicator you can be
Yeah.
if you don't start and if you don't try.
So the next step, when we know how important the communication skills are and when we know what is stopping us, next is to excel. How do we excel? There are, I think, a few suggestions you would like to share, Donna?
Yeah, of course, Yoga. When you're excelling at public speaking, and there are so many skills that you could develop,
Yeah.
and there are skills that we don't think, oh, these are things that are existing that we have to develop. For
Yeah.
example, your voice, you can have vocal variety, your body gestures, your posture. For example, if it's vocal variety, your voice itself, we think, okay, it's all about our tone. We just have to vary the tone when you're speaking, but it's not so. When it's your voice, you can change your rate of speaking, you can change the intensity, the volume of your speaking, or you can have pitch changes from high pitch to low pitch. So
Would you
there
give
is
us an example? You're so good at it.
Yeah, I can. For example, let's suppose that you're giving a speech at your year-end ball.
What if
Your
you're sad?
organization.
What do you? What if you deliver?
Yeah, so in a situation like that, you can be like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, how are you feeling tonight?
Yeah.
So your energy
Brilliant.
is high, your pitch is
Amazing.
high. Whereas if you're delivering a message or, a speech at a funeral, you won't be having that much of energy.
Yeah.
Like, ladies and gentlemen, it's with such sorrow that we announce the demise of, so and
Brilliant.
so. So your energy is less, your tone is less, your voice is
What
deep.
happens when we have vocal variety while we speaking? What happens to the person who is receiving it?
Yeah.
What would you say?
So this is depending on whether you want to communicate effectively. So I
Right.
suppose that everyone who wants
to.
to communicate, they want to communicate effectively. If so, if you have vocal variety, you can retain the attention that the audience is giving to you, because your voice, the energy will be more attractive, more colorful for everyone to listen to. Have you seen there are speeches where you're so glued to it,
Yeah.
you don't feel like stop listening to
Yeah.
this person because they're so soothing to the ear,
Yeah.
and their message is good, they communicate brilliantly. And if that is the type of speaker that you want to be,
Yeah.
this is how you can excel at it.
Brilliant.
You can change your voice, you can have the right posture,
Yeah.
the body language can
Yeah.
be perfect, and because your body too speaks a lot. I told you the example of that
Yeah.
person who snaps and calls people, so
Yes.
that creates a huge impact.
Yes.
So these are things, Yoga. Do you want to touch a little bit on the posture and body language?
Yes, for sure. Now, for example, there are people who don't want to look you in your eye when when they are speaking.
Yes.
And the moment something like that happens, you don't trust them at all.
Yeah.
And there are people who want to open their arms, open their body. They want to own the whole place. So
Yes.
you feel like, wow, there is something there. You can trust them. They are here to take over, right? And then
Yeah.
there are people who don't want to do that. They fold their arms. They want to become small. You know already that there is a confidence issue there.
Yes.
There are
Yes.
people who clasp hands. There is a confidence issue there. Then there are people who stand up straight. So their posture is great. They can breathe easy. That will help, as you said, for the vocal variety also, right? So these are ways in which we excel.
Yeah.
There are hand gestures that we use. There are times when we don't use anything at all. There are
Yes.
times when we use pauses effectively.
Absolutely.
So these are areas that we can use to make it even better.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And if you go on to it, I think that's a separate podcast
For sure.
for us to deliver.
I'm sure there is going to be some other talented speakers who will come in this series and discuss on this in detail.
Yeah.
But I think this is all the time we have.
For today, absolutely.
It-
And we do hope we were able to create some impact in you, and you got that spark, hopefully, from us to excel and to develop, to progress in this communication journey of yours. So let's see you all with another episode.
Thank you
of
very
Beyond
much.
Words.
Take care. Good luck.